This is John Cleary from New Orleans, Louisiana, and you're listening to UK Bob, the Good Morning Blues.
Yes, indeed. We have flipped over to the B side, the funky side, very much groovier in the New Orleans style, organ, horns, all that stuff. And there's several new releases out. We're actually going to kick off with live recording from 1982. This is Jack McDuff, and there were, I think it was a week-long residency he did, and they've taken, it's a double album, they've taken like 15, 20 tracks from different nights from 1982, so 40 years ago. To get you into that groove. The reason we're doing this is very pleased to have the Filthy Six coming to town, a British funk soul band, very much jazzier, soul jazz, I guess, in that dimension than a lot of the funk bands in New Orleans. But they're here Friday night, and you're going to talk to Nick ETWELL, who's the lead trumpet player and the guy that organized the whole thing, as we get further down our next few tracks.
what you want, you can live in reverse. Call it black, you can call it blue. Let this lesson be a message to you. You can let this message be a lesson to you, yeah. Call it this, call it that, call it what it is, Lord, where it's at. Call it magic, call it tragic. Let this lesson be a message to you. Let this message be a lesson to you. Any way you want. If you choose, you can't miss with the stuff I use. Think it's evil, you can think it's true. Let this lesson be a message to you. Let this message be a lesson to you. I'll give it some thought now.
FM is proud to be the radio sponsor for the Little 5 Points Halloween Festival and Parade, the #1 Halloween festival in the South. On Sunday, October 23rd, join your WRFG family for a little fun on foot as we participate in the Little 5 Points Halloween Festival Parade. Come on out, bring your family and friends, and let's have a good time representing WRFG. Our theme is Powers Beware. Feel free to wear your WRFG t-shirt or your WRFG paraphernalia, or if you'd like, wear a costume. If you've got noisemakers or pom-poms, please feel free to bring them. All ages are welcome. Time, meetup point, duration, and route, along with sign-up details, are on our website at WRFG.org. Get your steps in, have a little fun, and represent for your favorite station for progressive information, WRFG 89.3 FM. WRFG family and friends. On behalf of the board, staff, and volunteers, we want to send our appreciation for your support during our recent on-air fund drive. We are most grateful for those who donate faithfully to ensure that we stay on the air, providing you progressive news, information, and quality hand-picked music. We want to remind those who pledged to please fulfill your promise as soon as possible. You can simply mail your donations to 1083 Austin Avenue Northeast, Atlanta 30307. You can also utilize our secure online donation portal at WRFG.org. Again, we cannot thank you enough for the generous, loving support of your independent community radio station, 89.3 FM and WRFG.org. We exist, resist, and persist.
So now that your joints have mellowed in with the moods, your coffee has hopefully worn down a little, and you're getting a little slinky. What did we hear? We heard Jack McDuff, Deja Vu, from 1982. If you follow the Delvin Lamar organ trio, as I do, you'd be maybe interested to know where that all started around 2016, 15, 16, with a West Coast, Northwest Coast band called the True Loves. And that was the next song you heard, called Shambling. Right after that, the New Master Sounds with What You Want. And the reason that's in there is because Eddie Roberts of the New Master Sounds started this tremendous label about 2 years ago now up in Denver called Color Red. And I think it's to do with Colorado, but that's just me. And the whole point of all this and connectivity is to get you into thinking about the music and bring up a guest. I guess Filthy Six have been around for 10 plus years. And I told him it's just CD soul jazz. He said, not at all, not at all. He says it's hip-shaking, horn-led B3s and boogaloos, baby. So they're going to be here Friday night at the Southern Feed Store. Those of you that know Rafael Piera, that's his baby too, just like Buteco. So we're going to get groovy with him and play you bits from their EP and get you synced into what that's all about. But first off, you need to lean back and enjoy a brand new piece with a kind of a Latin groove to it. This is the Filthy Six doing exit music, and then you'll get to chat to the man himself, Mr. Nick ETWELL. I forgot, before Nick comes on, we're going to sneak in an upbeat track from their EP called I gotta get extra coffee for this one, Mr. Schminglebangle. And it's a mid-paced samba, I guess, but the trumpet solo that you'll hear is Nick Etwell himself. And I just thought, well, let's just up the groove a little bit before he pops in and tells us all about the Soho EP, which they are pouring into the living room at the Southern Feed Store Friday night.
Where you at, Atlanta? This is John Papa Grow, and you are listening to UK Bob Good Morning Blues on WRFG. You're gonna have a great day. Yeah, you're right.
Well, this week's show, Good Morning Blues, gets really jazzy, funky, and soulful because I have the delightful opportunity to have a chat with Mr. Nick Etwell from the Filthy Six. How are you?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
Well, I'm just shaking a leg and waking up, and I've done the towel on the head, doggy style kind of thing to make sure that I'm not too combed and outrageous, and I don't wear a suit anymore. So that's
Okay,
my normal morning shuffle.
Yeah,
good. I've been telling people about the bands and the name, and one of my favourite things is the fact that I love titles that use adjectives and slang that are not heard much here in America, kind of like Ian Dury or Steve Marriott, So that's one of the things that. But was there some other reason to call yourselves the Filthy Six?
Well, there is, but I'm not sure we can discuss that at breakfast time.
Well, it depends,
Well,
are we talking a full Monty or what?
Well, I'll kind of keep it brief, but essentially, when we first started playing together about 20 years ago, I used to run this monthly night in this little basement club in Soho called the Tatty Bogle Club, which is a notorious little spot, a little basement bar just off Carnaby Street, actually, at the back of Carnaby Street. And I think pretty sure it was a brothel in the daytime and a music club at night. And I did this monthly night every Thursday. I think it was the last Thursday of the month for 2 years. And, various shenanigans ensued. And after one particular evening, the title, The Filthy Six, came out, and we thought that could be quite fun. And then obviously quickly realised it was half the dirty dozen. So it stuck, and here we are 20 years later.
Well, it's funny because I can add to that, because I've tried to tell people as a descriptive where, you're required to in America, you've got to have a comparison. I said, well, you could call them the educated man's JTQ or the poor man's dirty dozen. It just depends which way you look at it. But now I know the place you're talking about is in the Mews on the other side between Carnaby and Regent Street, right?
Yes, it is. That's right. Exactly. Yes. Just off Beak Street. Kingley Court. Yeah. Yep.
Well, I know the club you're talking about and was owned by the Ukrainians, and there were some very dodgy things going on there. But apparently I'd been there with Tony O'Malley, had a residency there a few years back, and they cleaned it up, made it very posh. And it's a members club only.
Well, I think it's poshed up now, but back in 20 years ago, it was still very seedy. And I was told when we first started playing there by the guy that ran it that Duke Ellington actually played a gig there back in the 50s, I think it was, when he came to London. So it always had some kind of jazz connotation. There was jazz players used to play down there. So I think it had a very potted history, an interesting history over the years. And it's a shame to see it kind of glammed up and swallowed up into the, gentrification of the area. But there you go.
I mean, you and I couldn't afford to drink there anymore, so that's probably just...
You can't afford to drink anywhere in London these days.
Meanwhile, here we are talking about den of iniquities and dodgy places, and you're about to head to one of ours in East Atlanta Village called the Southern Feed Store tomorrow night. It's like, how did that happen, And Rafa, I'm sure, is going to be excited to have some very bouncy live music, and I just don't know how you connected with him.
Well, I actually connected with him through Kevin Scott, the bass player, who is do you call them Atlantonians or Atlanteans?
I think just Atlantans.
Atlantans, okay.
Yeah.
So I first met him when I first brought the 56 over to the States, which was April 2014. And he joined me for a 10-date run. And he was recommended by Michael League from Snarky Puppy. And he has become a good friend. We actually did 3 tours that year. And we became good friends. He's invited me to Atlanta, and I've played a few of his James Brown Funky Christmas dues with the Atlanta Funk Society.
Oh, I know. Well, yes, of course. No, I didn't realise that you were involved in that, but that makes absolute sense, yeah.
Well, absolutely. So I've done a couple of those, and I met Rafa during the last one I did, which was, was it Christmas 18? I think it was. Yeah, it was Christmas 18. So that was 4 years ago. So Rafa was on percussion for that. Bernard Purdy was playing drums on that one. It was
pretty boy.
Yeah, absolutely. He's still pretty. So we've known each other for a few years. I've not seen him since. I don't think I've seen Rafa since then. But me and Kevin are good pals. He's actually moved to New York now. But he's a phenomenal bass player, and he's doing this run as well. So you'll see him if you come down tomorrow night.
Oh, that will be terrific. No, I'm going to be there. Going back to the name, filth is funny because it's you can use rude words that are not banned by the FCC, but if you were doing this in London, people might relate to the police, which is another term for cops that we use. But we're more likely to head down to the rude side of town for that name. And now we get to talk about, you check out some girl and say, oh, that's a nice bit of brass. And I thought, well, that's all very relevant. But I forgot to mention, actually, we talked about the band earlier in the show, but you are the guy that blows his own trumpet. So we can say words like that. And I think you collate everybody together back in the beginning?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's basically my baby, this project, the band. I was always into this music, even when I was studying classical music at the Royal College of Music when I first moved to London, and I harboured ambitions of playing in orchestras and the London orchestras and that sort of thing. But I'd go home after a day of playing Berlioz or Tchaikovsky, and I'd go home and put on Lou Donaldson and Grant Green, and I just loved that music, that kind of period of soul jazz, the kind of late 60s Blue Note prestige thing. And I didn't think that I could, play in a band doing that style of music. But then I always used to put a band together for the college parties, but I'd play piano and sing, and we'd do sort of rock and roll and all sorts of silly covers. But as I left college and I went to Trinity College in Music and did a big band scholarship and met some guys who could actually play, play jazz and play blues properly. And I sort of fell in with them and started forming a band with some guys from there. And the nucleus of the Filthy Six, the first kind of incarnation, was those guys down at Tazzy Bogle, and of which Mark, the sax player, is still he's still left over, but the rest is
he's still suffering along, is he?
He's still suffering along with my nonsense, yeah. But the lineup's changed, over time. The front line's still the same 20 years later, but the rhythm section guys have come and gone. We've been through a few, but this band, this lineup has been together about 8 years now.
Well, for those of you that are still not too sure what we're talking about, the Filthy Six is a super interesting trend led by Nick, who's talking to us now. It kind of started in Soho, ended up on the Acid Jazz label, which was a huge deal. Since then, played with and opened for everybody you can think of, and played in the real big the clubs where you require a cravat, not just the little dirty dens. And then what you did, 2015, you were part of the Mumfords touring the US, but luckily you escaped before Fame came along and poured lots of money in their pockets. So well done,
Well, I toured with the Mumford guys for over 10 years. I was touring the States with them for the first time. In fact, the first time I came to Atlanta was it? I think it was the Buckhead Theatre in 2010. And we went out one of the nights. We ended up in the Star Bar and met a lovely singer called Lauren. I can't remember her surname, and I'm still mates with her today. And she came over to London recently with her husband, and we went out for drinks. And we were saying, "Bloody hell, we've been doing this for 12 years now." But I loved that kind of little 5 Points area was great, and I was like, oh, I really like this place. There was a really cool sort of second-hand vintage clothes store run by a lovely old elderly couple. I bought a couple of great jackets from there, and I was like, this seems like a cool place, you know. And yeah, funny then meeting Kevin and coming back and doing some of those Atlanta Funk Society gigs, and yeah, I just keep finding myself coming back. You know, it's a cool town.
This town is jam-packed with some of the greatest musicians who like living here because of the buzz. You know, we talked about New Orleans on the side and stuff like that, but one of the other things that gave it a boost was Katrina. A lot of New Orleans musicians who just couldn't face going back or nothing to go back to moved up to Atlanta. They either came here or they went to Texas. Yeah. So that added a lot of brass to the ranks of the personnel living here. But we need to play everyone some music, and we can talk more about the music once we've injected it in their lugholes. And as I was saying earlier about names and stuff like that, you know, names of songs and using words. Like I use words that I would otherwise get into trouble if I used the American, but I can use the British version and tell people all day long to bugger off, and I can't get into trouble for it, see, so that's very good. The words of the songs are important. Like one of my favourite Steve Marriott's is the One Eyed Trouser Snake, Rumba. So this is the Filthy Six version, and it's just called Swapsies.
announcement brought to you by your station for progressive information and hand-picked quality music, WRFG 89.3 FM, WRFG.org. In response to a call by the United National Anti-War Coalition, UNAC, for renewed attention to the billions of dollars expended for war, military armaments, and enforcing economic sanctions on multiple countries, there will be a street action on Monday, October 24th in Atlanta. The International Action Center, Black Alliance for Peace, Friends of the Congo, Atlanta Cuba Coalition, Workers' World Party, and others will assemble at the intersection of North Decatur and Claremont Road at noon to call for money for human needs, not for war at home and abroad. In the U.S. and around the globe, working and poor people of all nations bear the brunt of imperialist warfare, state repression, economic cutbacks, environmental catastrophes, and pandemic illnesses and death. The demonstration is to call for no more money for war. Participants are to bring signs, banners, drums, and noisemakers. Again, the date for the action is Monday, October 24th at noon at the intersection of North Decatur and Claremont. For additional information, the email is atlantaiac@AOL.
Good morning, Atlanta. Kit Packham from One Jump Ahead here, throwing my voice all the way from England. You're listening to Good Morning Blues with that big swinging dignitary, UK Bob, on WRFG Atlanta.
So I don't know what you call swapsies, but to me that's probably the bluesiest of the bits on the 4-track EP that we've been talking about, called Soho Filth, because it was, I think it was recorded live at Dean Street, right?
That's right, it was.
But if I try and describe you to people, everybody likes to use adjectives and comparisons and stuff like that. But try to refine it. I would say you're more groovy soul than dirty funk and more boogaloo than blues. But you tend to use the word jazz. Am I wrong?
Soul jazz, and I use that, the soul jazz term.
Great label.
Well, yeah, exactly, another great label. That, the kind of late 50s hard bop thing that sort of evolved into soul jazz, Cannonball Adderley and, Jimmy Smith, and that, just that down-home, bluesy, gospel-y, it brought it all down home, brought it all back home, after the sort of bebop craziness. And then that kind of organ combo thing, Jack McDuff and George Benson and Jimmy McGriff and Jimmy Smith himself, and kind of that's just that bluesy, groovy, Lee Morgan, Sidewinder, and bringing those boogaloo grooves in, which were popular in New York, and then they became the tunes that everyone wanted on their record because they thought they would cross over as well, and it became a thing, and that's just the style of music that really is closest to my heart, and my feet as well.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the thing we talked about in New Orleans and the events and places. I can't imagine anyone going to that city and not finding themselves, if they are sitting down, just toe and feet tapping, or if they're standing at anyone's show, they'll be moving in some direction. And if they're not doing those things, they're in the wrong bloody town.
Yeah, well, either that or they're dead.
Yes, exactly. So I love that particular one as one that fits perfectly for the program this morning. But I was talking about the titles. I think it's also an English thing. Same with band names. In America, it tends to be more conventional. They want the name of maybe the chief artist or the lead singer as part of it, and
they want a more descriptive title.
Yeah, exactly. Something more to focus on. I like the vagueness of we used to. I'm an old geezer in the 70s, walking around London. There'd be bands like the Crispy Ambulance and stupid names. And
Tentacles.
Yeah, and some of the album titles and whatever, it just makes it more interesting because you don't have a clue. The giveaway over here is actually record labels. So anything on Color Red is rather good in the soul funk arena, and no, Eddie did not pay me to say that.
No.
Or the other one is Coal Mine.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That steers you as to what you're going to get. Now, considering it's 2022, I found it fascinating because that harks back to the 70s when labels really did define what you were likely to hear.
But I mean, you have that with Blue Note. I mean, that's know, where this comes from, where this, the 56 ethos comes from those late 60s. Well, I mean, Blue Notes, just full stop, you know what you're going to get.
Right. Then you had Mosaic, and then you had all the Creed Taylor stuff. The label was the
CPI,
sound.
Absolutely. And Prestige, all that kind of thing.
And we come full circle 50 years back to the way I think it should be, because we're not racking music anymore. We're not labeling genres. There's no record shops to go flick through the racks on, not new so much, and certainly nowhere near the volume because so much is digitals.
If it's that, we're talking of little 5 points. Is it Wax Poetics? Is that
well, there's
what's that? There's a great record store at the just
Wax
the
and Tracks.
Wax and Tracks, is that the spot?
Yeah. Well, I get confused because my favorite vinyl store in London was actually not in London. It was in a suburb called Mr. Waxy. Had incredible, pristine 45s that have never been opened, and I loaded up on a ton of them many years ago. But there are probably half a dozen superb record shops here, but I would think more than most other places, and Little 5 Points in particular and Decatur
some great records there,
are part of that area, and the radio station is right round the corner from Little 5 Points.
There you go.
Yeah, see, we're in the heart of everything. But
I know, it's funny, isn't it?
But no, it's interesting how we use titles and to describe. We want to give as much information to someone when really just plonk it on and listen, and that was part of buying albums. Is there something interesting on the cover? Like, what on earth is that? I don't know. Let's put it on, have a listen. And people just don't do that anymore because it's a digital silo. It's not the same thing. But anyway, so you've got plans for a full-on album. I hope you don't get in too much of a sweat having to produce a whole album all at once for early next year.
Well, I'm kind of halfway there. I'm sort of hopefully more than halfway there. I'm sort of getting down to the final mixes of most of the tracks now. And actually, we put out a single recently at the end of the summer called Exit Music, which is sort of a bossa nova, sort of more loungy kind of vibe, I suppose. But I just wanted to get something out. We hadn't released anything for 5 years until this Soho Filth record, and I was like, I mean, how has it taken that long? Where the time goes. So I was like, determined.
Well, if you look backwards, you've only released every 5 years.
No, we released 2010 was the first record, 2012 was the second, and then 2016 was the third, and then this EP was end of last year, so that was 5 years.
Oh, well, then you're holding out on me this product that you've got that I don't know about in America. So.
Right, okay, yeah. No, the first eponymous record on Acid Jazz was 2010, the 56. Then the second one was The Fox, which was 2012, and then More Filth was 2016.
So if I send you a list of juicy titles just to throw on to something that you haven't written yet, do you think that might get used?
Very possibly, absolutely. I like a juicy title, so yes, who knows?
Well, that's the fun of it, isn't it? Because people will look down an album cover and go, "Oh my God, what's that?" Yeah.
Well, do you know what? We're talking about this EP and juicy titles. I don't know if you've played it yet or if you're thinking about playing it, but the Swagger Junkie, which that title came about because a friend of mine, a great trumpet player in London called Darren Wiles, who likes a good rant on Facebook, as do a lot of people. And he was just one day, he was just going, talking about walking around London, and in my head I was thinking of Soho. He's like, look at all these bloody swagger junkies thinking they're that and all this. And I just sat and I just laughing at the screen saying, swagger junkie, that's great. I've never heard that before. I'm going to use that. And I sat down at the piano. I think I say this in the liner notes of the record. I sat down at the piano and just wrote it that afternoon and just came up with this sort of boogaloo blues. And it just made me chuckle so much. And in my head, at least, the tune optimizes that title, perfectly. So
oh yeah, exactly. I mean, and some of the words we use to describe not just characters but themes, almost genres of human being that we decide to label, like you and I were talking about Essex Boys earlier, stuff like that. They do get labelled that way. But yeah, that's a good one, Mission. That's the kind of thing that I love, and that's what you can do with instrumentals because there's no lyrics to tie it to a particular set of words, and that's the great thing about it. So
absolutely, yeah.
Well, terrific to have you on this morning, talking filth, because we like a little filth for breakfast, and
absolutely, don't we all?
Somebody asked me once, so Bob, what does a man with a large appendage, have for breakfast? I said, well, personally, I have bacon and eggs, but it's each to their own.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's true. And for those of you that are joining in late, as some of you do on a regular basis, and you shouldn't, but because you will get caught out, you're excused as long as you show up tomorrow night at the other side of town, not the dark side of town in terms of the other side of the tracks. East Atlanta is a groovy part of town, but it's not in the downtown focus. But the Southern Feed Store, Friday night, 21st, the Filthy Six, rock your socks off, I hope. And if you don't enjoy it, then please see the doctor on Saturday morning.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I'm really looking forward to it.
We're going to finish. I did actually exit music as the lead-in to everybody have a cup of tea and a biscuit because they needed to wake up slow. We're going to close out with Mr. Schmingelbangle.
Ah, fantastic.
What was the cause of that name?
Well, that's the funny one. It was actually my dear old friend James, who is sadly no longer with us, my old college flatmate at the Royal College of Music. He was a fantastic French horn player. And when we used to have partake in a few drinkies and other things of an evening, he'd often go into this kind of gobbledygook speech and start talking nonsense. And one of his favourite phrases was "Schmingelbangle," and it just sort of stuck. And we used to call him Mr. Schmingelbangle, and that was his nickname.
Well, I think it's very, very good to honour those that have gone with something that will keep it going. Right.
And I think he would have loved that tune for sure.
Terrific. Wonderful, Nick. Thanks so much for your time. Great information. And I'll try and corner you tomorrow night for that $5 you owe me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Lovely chat.
My thanks to Nick ETWELL, leader of the Filthy Six. And you can get that EP in a variety of places, but most probably the best place would be the record label Color Red in Colorado, and it's called Soho Filth. And have a look at the back catalogue and get your groove on. We're going to head back to New Orleans for Javier or Xavier LYNN. I still haven't figured out which is which, and finish off something we started on side A. See you next week.
Whoa, pretty thing, tell me, are you a real woman? Whoa, pretty thing, tell me, are you a real woman? Well, you sent me friend request. If I'd seen you, I would have known it. You're lying to me saying we met just yesterday, but you have a post from 2 days earlier about how you were about me. Whoa, pretty thing, ain't no way you a real woman. says approach with caution.